body for volunteering in New South Wales. Grow communities and bring people together through volunteering.
You're listening to The Voice of Volunteering. I'm your host, Ben Hillier, and today I'm talking with Andrea Putting about the social mission revolution and volunteering.
Hi everyone, my name is Ben Hillier and I will be your host on this episode. Today we're talking with Andrea Putting about the idea of a social mission revolution and how it relates to volunteer management. Andrea is an international speaker, author and trusted advisor to authentic influencers. Through her keynote speeches, books, programs and podcasts, she guides individuals and businesses in building co-creative communities and adopting social missions. For those of you following along with the National Standards for Volunteer Management, this episode will cover Standards 2, 3 and 4 and give you some practical ideas as to how your organisation can meet these standards. Andrea, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a bit of an overview of your work relating to the volunteering space?
Thank you, Ben. It's a pleasure to be here. So I've always been involved in volunteering, which sometimes you don't realise you're actually doing it because it's so much part of your life. And I once said that I was so addicted to volunteering that that I just kept doing it because I find that it just brings so much fulfilment in my life. So where I started with recognising what volunteering really meant to me, now I'm going to go back further than what I was going to. It came from a time when I went through a depression after I had finished studying. It was like my life felt like I had no meaning. And I actually got into quite a depression. I had days when I was rolled up in my bed and couldn't get out of bed and blah-de-blah like everyone else who gets into a depression. But what got me out of that was thinking about other people and starting to move into that space of, well, who else can I help? Who can I be focusing on rather than myself and my own oh dear, poor me attitude that I might have had at the time. So that's really woken me up to the concept of the importance of volunteering. Yeah. So, but then the social mission revolution didn't start there. It started with me founding the Chocolate and Coffee Day for Religious Harmony. Now that was a result of what I had seen on what was happening in the world at that time in Australia. It was at the time of the Lindt Chocolate Cafe siege, and I'm not going to go too much into that. Basically, 2 innocent victims and the gunman were killed. We didn't know how people were going to react. The gunman was a Muslim and claiming to be doing this in the name of Allah, so we thought there would be a reaction to the Muslim community. The Muslim community were afraid to go out. But instead what happened was that 150,000 people went onto social media with the hashtag I will ride with you to ride the train, the bus, the ferry with Muslim people to make sure they arrive safely. So I brushed over that really quickly, and there is so much more to that. However, to me there was this urge that there has to be this something stronger that happens from that. There had to be something that would make a difference in our world, in our communities long term, because obviously we wanted to live in a world of peace and harmony and we wanted to accept each other. So that's when I started Chocolate and Coffee Day 12 months later and encouraging people just to reach out to someone else who's different to them and share in the simple pleasures of life, chocolate, coffee and conversation, because this is when we break down barriers that divide community. So I had to rush through that quickly to get to the point. That got me to a point where I thought, wow, social mission makes a big difference in my life. It's changed the way that I feel about myself. It's changed the way I look at life. It changed the way I thought about business and community. And there was something in there. So I wanted to explore that further, started the Social Mission Revolution podcast and talked to people who were involved in social missions. So whether it's business or individuals, and really explored that. And then that led to me writing books and and speaking about the whole concept of social mission and the importance of volunteering in our lives.
Really well summarised for such a detailed, and clearly there's a lot of things that happen to kind of bring you to this idea. Can you explain the kind of core idea behind the social mission revolution for us?
Certainly, I do get asked this question. So to me, a social mission is kind of a phrase that covers the concept of doing something that is not for profit. It's not about business. It's not about me. And I often talk about going beyond the why. So it's not about my why. It's about something bigger than myself. And so I refer to it as being in service to others. So other people might say giving back or paying it forward, but it's just about that making a difference in the world. So it can take on many different forms, as I discovered when I started doing the podcast and writing the book, that it can vary from things like contributing to charitable events, donating funds and gifts, volunteering, reaching out to someone in need, starting a cause or a movement, or even that thing about choosing who you choose for your services that you engage in, who you buy from. Also, because if businesses are involved in social mission, then you're supporting social mission by doing that. So then revolution, of course, is about doing things that is changing the way that we do things in the world. It's changing society, because we very much got into this very materialistic way of living. And I think that people just kind of start to feel like, well, there's something missing in my life and I need to be doing something else. What is that something else that's going to bring me fulfillment? And that's where I find social mission fits that bill perfectly.
Right. So how do you see volunteering and volunteer management fitting into this framework of the social mission revolution?
Well, when I look at it, because my books cover a fairly broad way of being involved in social mission, but I find volunteering is really the backbone of it. The backbone of community is our volunteering. So in what I've worked with, social mission can be, like I said, a very various types of things, but not everybody wants to start their own movement. Not everybody can be the mega fundraiser. That does not suit everybody. And for various reasons, it can be time and all sorts of things, but it doesn't fit all of our skills. And it doesn't necessarily, it's going to fulfill everybody, because starting your own cause or your own charitable adventure is a lot of work. And I tell you, when you talk to people who have, it just involves their whole life. That just takes over everything. And that's not going to work for everybody. So finding a volunteer gig that really suits that person is so important. So I talk about some of the simple things that people can do, and it doesn't have to be big. But if all you've got is one day a month or 1 hour a month that you can give to somebody else in volunteering, then that's massive, and that's going to change your own perspective of life and help change other people's lives. So I think as far as volunteering management goes, it's a really important thing to understand that, yes, you have a cause. You have something that needs to be done. You have roles that need to be filled. Yet there is something more for the individual volunteers that they're going to get out of it. And it's about helping them to find what it is that's going to fulfill them, because when your volunteers are fulfilled, when they're happy with how they are participating in your organisation, they're the ones that are going to stay there. They're the ones that are going to give their time. They're going to go beyond the call of duty to be involved because it brings them joy and fulfillment. So I think it's a really important thing for volunteer organisations to understand that it's not just about them. While their cause it's obviously at the core of everything, but there has to be that something that the volunteers are getting out of it as well.
That makes a lot of sense. One of the other ideas that I saw in your book was this idea of being an authentic influence. Can you explain a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah, I talk about authentic influencer as not being an influencer like on social media. We're not going out there to make a big, bold difference in, hey, look at me, follow me. It's about being authentic to who you are. It's focusing on that authenticity of who I am, what I believe in, what my values are, and staying true to those. Then we have that influence in the world. Now, I talk about stories about people who have influenced my life, they haven't gone out in the world to be an influencer, but their stories, the way that they live, the way that they are in the world has influenced me. And through influencing me, it's influenced my children and now influencing my grandchildren. And see that ripple out? It influences the way that I am in the world, and that ripples out in my children's lives. So I think just acknowledging that we are, as each one of us has this opportunity to influence other people's lives, but we've got to be authentic with that and not be thinking about it as oh, I want the world to look at me because I'm special. It's like going, well, who am I influencing and how am I influencing them? And if we can it's being true to ourselves. And I just believe that whenever we are, then others are going to notice that. And we're going to be giving that help to somebody else in some way just because we are true to who we are.
Right. How do you think that principle can be applied to volunteer managers and their volunteers?
Yeah, volunteer management's really interesting. I have been told that I'm very good at managing volunteers. It's like, okay, well, if I can manage volunteers, I can manage anybody, because I think you have to be more in tune with your volunteers, because you have to remember that the volunteers are volunteers. They can walk out anytime they like. So you have to make sure that they are happy with what they're doing, with the roles that they have, because otherwise they're out of there. So it's really important for volunteer managers. They are there amongst the volunteers in the trenches, that they're not putting themselves above them and saying, well, I don't do those dirty jobs. We have to be with our people and empowering them to be who they are, empowering them to have the opportunities to grow and develop. So when you come to authentic influencing as volunteer managers, I think that's one of the most important spots to be an authentic influence, because your volunteers are going to see right through you. Give them 5 minutes of your time and they're going to see right through you very quickly. So if you're not true to who you are, if you're not living the values of the organisation, of yourself, they're out of there.
Fantastic. I think that's some excellent advice. So we also know that, like, volunteer managers, these people tend to be pretty kind of over-givers. Have you got any advice for how to balance the altruism that can be a big motivation for volunteering with the need to look after yourself, and particularly as we enter very challenging times with the pandemic, the cost of living crisis, how to really balance that altruism and self-care?
Oh, this is a really good question, Ben. Really good. I am the ultimate overgiver, so I completely understand. And I have, in the past, a couple of years ago, I got really quite ill, quite sick, and I just completely burnt myself out, as a lot of overgivers do. So I've learned the hard way that it's really important that I learn to say no. I have to look at my schedule and go, can I give this time? I was recently looking at this thinking, I'd love to do some more volunteering. And I was thinking of a particular organisation, and I was looking at I looked at my schedule and just go, no, this is not the time for me. So I kind of coined a phrase. In order to say yes, I have to learn to say no. I have to say no to something so that the things that I do say yes to, I can give my utmost to. So it really is about that balance in our lives. Okay, I have so many hours a week where I need to work for a living. I have so many hours a week I need to give to my family. What time do I have? And how do I make sure that there is time for me? Now, I do that regularly. I have this thing of make sure that I get this time for myself. So I schedule in a day a month, which I call Andrea Day, and I don't schedule anyone in. Don't ask me to do anything. That's my day. So I have to do that. So other things that are really important is making sure that you have, so depending on what your volunteer gig is, I know that one of the ones that I do is I volunteer with emergency ministries in Victoria. So it can be a very emotionally draining when you're sitting there talking to people who are going through a trauma. So afterwards, I need time to really reconnect with who I am. And so sometimes we just need to allow, okay, I'm volunteering in this time frame, but then I'm going to need X amount of time to reconnect to myself, to bring myself back into flow for the following day, whatever the next day brings, whether it's work, family, or play. You need to have that time that's going to just allow you to de-stress, to let go, and that makes a big difference. Also, if you're doing multiple volunteering gigs, which some of us overgivers do, make sure that there's a variety of different things that you're doing, that it's not all the same thing. And that's one thing that I thought of when I was looking at this other organisation. Yes, I could do this job that takes on a lot of responsibility and I'd really enjoy it, but I don't really have time for it. Maybe I can just volunteer in this way once in a while for them. So learn to say no.
Always good advice. Can be counterintuitive, but still good advice. So I noticed a lot of our conversation today and your work that I've looked at talks about how important it is for volunteers to find the right position. Have you got any advice for the volunteer management side of things, helping people when they're thinking about designing positions and recruiting volunteers, how to help create the right position as well as find the right position?
It's easy to fall into this trap of, for example, if you're looking at someone's resume when they're doing a job, you might see that they have X, Y, and Z skills. Now, there's a lot of skills that I have, and I can be very good at them, and I can put my time into them, but it doesn't mean that I necessarily enjoy doing them. So that's an important thing to think about when you're looking at a volunteer and that they've got all these skills and things that they can do. What is it that they really want to do? What is it that's going to bring them joy? So just because somebody can fill a database doesn't mean that they want to spend their volunteer time doing that. So I think it's about listening to them and going, what is it that's really attracts you to our organisation and that you want to be doing? Yes, we've got A, B, and C that we need to fill. What is it that you want to be doing? Okay, there are things that you need to be done, and when you're working in situations such as an emergency or for an event where things have to happen quick and you just need people to fill spaces, that's great, and people will do that. But long term, there's got to be something else that they may want to do, that they may want to get involved in. So it's always about giving them the opportunity to tell you where they would like to go. What is it that they would like to do? So if they've been volunteering with you for a while, sit down with them and ask them, is there something that you would like to do? Do you have some ideas of where we can go with this? Now, some people will be quite happy where they are, but other people will go, well, actually, what I'd really like to do is, and that can open up for them that they're going to hang around a lot longer. They're not going to go off and look for something else to do. And they may give you some new ideas of what you can do. They're just going to be so much more effective if what they're doing is what they want to be doing.
Fantastic. Well, as we sort of come to the end of our wonderful conversation today, was there anything else around any of these topics you'd like to comment on?
What I always think is as really important when it comes to volunteering and social mission is for everyone to remember, to realise that there is something that you can do And it's not for everyone to be doing the great big things. You don't have to go and solve world problems. You just have to start where you are. There is something that each and every one of us can do. We all have different talents, different skills, different things that we want to do. There's something that we can do. And when we're in volunteer organisations, for us just to remember that our volunteers are volunteers, and volunteering is an opportunity for them to grow and develop. And if we take them along the journey, they're going to help our organisations grow and develop as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Andrea, for contributing your time and sharing your expertise today. What can people do if they want to find out more about your work?
Well, they can listen to the podcast, Social Mission Revolution, or they can jump on my website, andreaputting.com.au, and there they'll find connections to my books, to the podcast. I have another website for the podcast, so they can get all those connections through my website. And my books are available on all the internet book sales, but also on my website. Go to my website and buy it, and I'll sign it for you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for your time. I hope for the listeners that they found today's show interesting and enlightening, and I hope everyone is looking forward to the next episode. Bye for now.
You've been listening to Voices of Volunteering, presented by the Centre for Volunteering. For resources, tools, training and news, head over to our website, volunteering.com.au.